Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Sussex Sport Weekly podcast. I am Mark Dunford, and I'm joined by Brighton and Hove Albion writers Derren Howard and Frankie Elliott, and Sussex Sport legend Steve Bone. Brighton start their European adventure tonight as they take on AEK Athens in the Europa League. We will look at that fixture and see what Roberto De Zerbi, sorry about that, had to say ahead of the game. Plus, we look at what we can expect from their opponents. Crawley Town enjoyed another win and rose to 6th in League Two, but their 3-2 victory over Tranmere was marred by idiotic fan behaviour. We will discuss that, and we will also find out how our Sussex sides got on the FA Cup and who the successful ones have got in the next round. You can read all about these stories with videos and pictures on sussexworld.co.uk. But we'll start with the big game tonight. Derren, you were at the press conference with Roberto De Zerbi yesterday ahead of this game. What did he have to say about the occasion?
Yeah, you just got a sense of excitement, really. Roberto De Zerbi was at the press conference, obviously, and Pascal Gross was there as well, the experienced Brighton midfielder. And yeah, you just got the sense that there was, that it is a big game coming up for them, and that they're really looking forward to it. Especially Pascal Gross, he was one of Brighton's first signings when they came into the Premier League, and he spoke really well about the rise and how they struggled at the beginning to establish themselves in the top flight, and just to be on that natural progression, which has now seen them, take on some of the best, or will be taking on some of the best teams in Europe. And there's just a real sense of excitement, and the group that they've got. Although it's one of the hardest groups in the Europa League draw, I think they're generally excited, and they wouldn't want it any other way, to be honest. To get in your first European adventure, to get the chance to play, some really iconic teams. They've got Athens, first of all, which they are tipped to be one of the weaker teams in the group. Athens, I was looking at the odds earlier, and they're 20-1 to win the group. But I think they're going to actually be quite strong. I think Athens are a good lineup. They won the Greek double last season. They play a very aggressive style of football, and I think
don't nick all of Frankie's stuff, Derren. God, we got Frankie talking about.
Yeah, moving into Frankie's profile here, but yeah, I think they're going to be great. And from a Brighton perspective, Evan Ferguson is fit and available. Solly March is fit and available as well. So, and I think Ansu Fati will make his home debut for Brighton as well.
Do you think he'll start?
Yeah. Pardon?
Do you think Fati will start?
I think he will start. I think he'll start in the number 10 role, ahead of João Pedro. So I think João Pedro will come on as an impact substitute. Fati will play either behind Evan Ferguson or Danny Welbeck. I think he's going to go with Danny Welbeck in that main striking role, just to go for the experience. Ferguson's still managing this knee issue, and I think you'll see Ferguson come off the bench as well.
Oh, interesting. Excellent. Wow, Frankie. Now, Derren's tried to steal your thunder, but a lot of people might not know a lot about AEK Athens. What can you tell us about them, and how are they performing this season, and who will be their danger men?
I mean, I feel like I've got nothing to say now, but it is arguably Brighton's easiest tie, in the sense that it's not as big or a star-studded lineup as the likes of Marseille or Ajax, but this is still a very, very tough test. First and foremost, to become Greek champions in a league which has Olympiakos and Panathinaikos, which have much bigger budgets than AEK Athens, to win the league by 5 points, and also, like Derren said, the Greek Cup as well, is an achievement. I know the Greek league isn't the strongest in Europe, but they still have some very strong teams in there. And also the major thing, I think, which will play an impact, is this is Brighton's first European game, and that is a very exciting thing. But AEK Athens, they've been doing this for a long, long time. Their first European adventure was 1966. They've reached a European Cup quarter-final in that era, in the 60s as well. They made it to a UEFA Cup semi-final in 1977. And they've been involved in European competitions, I think, for the last 13 out of the last 18 years. So they know how to do this. They might not be successful in that they've never won a European trophy, but group stage competition football in Europe they have done before, and it's shown in this squad as well. There's a number of players that have played for AEK Athens for a number of years. There's a number of players over the age of 30. You've got players like Nordin Amrabat, who's Sofran Amrabat's brother. the guy who's playing obviously in Manchester United now, who was a member of the Morocco World Cup squad. He's 36, but he's still a key member of the team. Vida as well. I don't know if you can remember when Croatia got to the 2018 World Cup final. He was the centre back partner of Lovren with the blonde ponytail. He's unfortunately not travelled, but again, experienced players with a lot of international experience as well as playing in European competition. I think that will do them well, because as well they don't have the sort of quality, or there's not as much fun money in Greek football, so they don't have £20 million, £30 million players like Brighton now do. But they still have, like I said, the understanding of how to deal with these big games. They're managed by, I've got his name, Mateus Almeida. He is the former Argentinian international. He made 40 caps for Argentina. He's not really had a long managerial career of yet, but again, he's played at the highest level. He's played at World Cups. He's played for Inter Milan. He set up this team really, really well. He's joined, he joined last season. They've gone on to win the Greek league. So he has already stamped his authority on that team, so to speak. They're known for very, like Derren said, a very physical, quite intense man-marking, pressing style. They don't take prisoners very easily, so I think Brighton will feel that very much so at the Amex tonight. So in regards to, do Brighton go in as favourites? Yes, they do, because in regards to the two teams on paper, they have a much better lineup. But in regards to how a game like this can go, I think this Greek side will have a look at the performance of teams like West Ham and Everton at the Amex in the last year and a half under Roberto De Zerbi, and think if we can set up in a very similar style, which suits them to play more counter-attacking football, with a striker like Levi Garcia up front, who scored 18 goals in 37 appearances last season, if they can catch a counter-attack sort of 1-0 victory, I think they will see that as their best opportunity, and they can have the experience and know-how to do that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Derren, it is going to be an incredible occasion. I think you and Sam Morton are there tonight, aren't you? What does it sort of mean to the fans and for the club, this one fixture?
Yeah, it just demonstrates the rise. It's just it's the best time to be a Brighton fan, to be honest. They're playing some of the best football in the Premier League. They've got a great manager, the strongest squad they've had, even though they've lost, two of their key players, Alexis McAllister and Moises Caicedo. And I just think the fans are just really embracing it and just living in the moment. It's really probably never going to be this good again, because you look at the money that's in the Premier League, and there's a lot of talk that there isn't a ceiling for Brighton, but this is probably about as good as it could ever be for them, really. And I think the fans are just really enjoying the occasion, having these big European nights. When you look back to a few years back, when they had to sell their stadium and were playing in Gillingham and playing at the Withdean, and then to get to the position they are in now, it's just an incredible story. And I just think every Brighton fan has just got to really enjoy these occasions while they're here, and I just think the team are going to go for it and trying to put on a good show and really tackle it in the best way possible, which is to play attacking football, entertain the fans, and see where it gets them. And I think it will be enough for them to get through to the group, to get out of the group stages and into the knockout phase as well. And I think that's what fans will be hoping for.
Yeah, absolutely. After watching Man United versus Bayern Munich last night, I think I've worked out, because Brighton beat Man United, because this is exactly how football works. Brighton would beat Bayern Munich 1-0 on the score lines. I think that's how it works. So
I wouldn't argue with that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great win on Saturday. Brighton versus beating Man United 3-1. They're back in Premier League action this Sunday against Bournemouth. On paper, a home banker for Brighton, we would say, but it's going to be interesting to see how the players handle their first Thursday, Sunday fixtures, isn't it, Frankie? I think.
Yeah, I think that at the moment is their only stumbling block, really, because I think for the first time, well, maybe ever, that Brighton went into that game against Manchester United, won 3-1, and were 3-0 up. And I think a lot of people had predicted that and expected that. They had gone in as playing the far better football, and weren't overawed by the occasion of playing at Old Trafford, and completely played United off the park. So the way they're playing, and as Jamie Carragher alluded to on Monday Night Football, it's no longer a shock now, Brighton winning these sort of games. And tonight, as well as another example, they go into their first European game. as favourites and would be disappointed if they didn't win the game. Despite this like being the little old Brighton playing in the Europa League, they go into every game now as favourites. And for Sunday's game against Bournemouth, as you'd say, you'd expect them to win quite comfortably. The only downside to that is they are playing off the back of a game on Thursday, one of the biggest occasions emotionally and physically. Can they recover in time to go again for what will be a tough test against the Bournemouth side? The no pushovers, and there were no pushovers at the Amex last season. It was Kerry Matoma's late winner that got them that very hard fought victory. So it's very much a case of seeing how they do and how many changes they will make as well. But they made 6 changes at Old Trafford and still looked pretty flawless. So that's going to be the interesting tape, because it is a very difficult thing to do. I mean, we saw it at the end of last season as well. Okay, the squad was more depleted, but when they were forced to play 3 games a week in May, you could really see how much they struggled in games against Nottingham Forest, Everton, Newcastle. Those were big defeats. That will be the only worry. But at the same time, as Derren alluded to, they are playing the best football certainly one of the best teams in the Premier League and probably in Europe as well, in regards to how unique their style is. So I'm sure they won't really fear it, to be honest, but how they cope with it will be another issue.
Yeah, absolutely. We just, as we talked live, we just had a tweet sent to us from Sam Morton, a screenshot saying that Lewis Dunk will not be playing tonight. I don't know if there's did you get any indication of that yesterday, Derren?
No, there was. Yeah, I saw that coming through. I'm not sure where that's come from. I'd be surprised if that would have been leaked from the Brighton side. But yeah, there was no talk of that yesterday. So that would be a major shocker and a real disappointment for Lewis Dunk. Hometown Brighton lad, and he'd be proud to lead Brighton out into Europe. So yeah, a bit of blow if that is the case. But there was absolutely no indication of that yesterday. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on that and see how that progresses.
Yeah, well, keep an eye on sussexworld.co.uk for the latest team news there with Derren. So moving on to Crawley Town, they had an eventful weekend. They beat Tranmere 3-2 thanks to an added time winner from Clyde Lawless. The win puts them up to 6th in League 2 as they head into this week's trip to Grimsby Town. But the game was marred by an incident that saw missiles thrown towards visiting keeper Luke McGee. A flare was also thrown on the pitch. The club have put out a statement apologising to Tranmere and condemning the fans. It could lead to a points deduction, closure of areas in the ground, or a hefty fine. This behaviour seems to be becoming more and more prevalent these days. We saw there was an incident at Horsham this week, Horsham away at Marlow this week in the FA Cup replay. Steve, can you tell us a bit more about that? And what do you think the punishments for these sort of fan behaviour isn't enough of a deterrent for them to stop? And
it's an interesting one. Briefly on the Horsham one, it's very much still being investigated, so not a lot we can say. But at the end of Horsham's FA Cup replay win at Marlow, they won 3-1 to go through. It appears that a home fan had a bit of a go at the goalkeeper, the Horsham goalkeeper, as he went to retrieve his water bottle from the back of the net at the end of the game. He then, I think defended himself somehow, and it all kicked off a little bit with quite a number of home fans involved, and all got a bit messy and unseemly. And as we were saying, these things do seem to be happening a little bit more often at non-league grounds and at League 2 grounds, as far as Crawley are concerned, and it's quite concerning, really, isn't it? There seems a particular issue at Crawley with flares being thrown. The question now for them has to be, how are people getting these into the ground if they know they've got
every home game I've been to, there's been a flare.
If they know they've got people bringing these in and with a view to using them when clearly they shouldn't be using them, because that's a danger to players and other fans, then they need to have better systems in place to search people on the way in. It's not difficult to find out who's got a firework or a flare on them and take them off them at the entrance. Or if you find, maybe the better deterrent is if you find someone with a flare, don't just take it off them, turn them away, don't let them into the ground. Take it off them and turn them away, sort of thing. It needs to be cracked down on. The one thing I do think is an interesting debate is the whole question of pitch invasions, because that's in recent years that's become a bit of an issue and a bit of a problem. My own view is that if a team has won promotion or got to a cup final or had a massive giant killing win, I don't think there's anything wrong with a celebratory pitch invasion. I know they can sometimes turn into a bit of a flare up, if there's opposition fans still there, but I think it would be a shame if those sort of occasions were sort of criminalised as well, if you like. But clearly there are things happening now at Crawley and at many other grounds as well that do need to be cracked down on and given proper deterrence.
Yeah, Frankie, have you noticed sort of more of this kind of behaviour when you've seen around grounds? I mean, AFC Vardinians, for example, do you get this kind of stuff?
No. Unfortunately, the crowd is well over the age of 60, so a pitch invasion would not be possible. A pitch walk might be on the cards, but no, I think we are noticing the effects of the COVID lockdowns is the main thing. I think we're seeing a much more prevalent rise in football violence since then. I think a lot of young kids are now it's certainly a much younger audience I've noticed of who are causing the letting off of flares or the essence of the football casual culture that used to be obviously prevalent in the 70s and 80s. I think that's sort of become, or would I say, cool again for people sort of the age between 16 and 20. I think there's lots of films they can watch. There are older people that go to the games that can tell them all about that sort of stuff. It's very much in sort of the mainstream media for them to sort of pick up and see as something that they want to take on themselves. And they're also, like I say, I think it very much stems from a situation where you have been told, you've been locked in your house for a year and a half or 2 years or however long we were, being told by people to do it who weren't following the rules themselves. I think that creates a sort of feeling and a site sort of putting two things up to you and saying, well, you can't tell us what to do. All the sort of that period was a lot of stigma towards the widening gap between rich and poor. People who were in power could do what they want, whether that be the police or the government. And I think a lot of kids have taken that alongside being trapped indoors for a long period of time, and it's led to this spurt of violence. Because especially in that first season back after when fans could return, which I think was 2021, 2022, when crowds could return in full capacity, we saw a real spike in fans running onto pitches, attacking players, violence within the stands.
Yeah,
and a lot of people just, which is right, is that people just say they're idiots. We need to get rid of them, crack down on it. These people are morons, and that's absolutely correct. Obviously, that behaviour is not tolerated, but just to call them that without looking at the reason for it just leads those sort of fans to go, well, they don't understand us, so we continue to behave like that. So it is definitely more prevalent. It's definitely a younger crowd, as I say, who feel that it's cool and they feel they're not being listened to. And it's that classic, which is what was happening before. But before the Premier League was invented, that was the classic problem. Before Hillsborough, the use of pens and football ID cards and so forth. So it's sort of history repeating itself in a way, and that behaviour, like you say, is can't be tolerated. But I think a lot of Crawley fans, those fans that are doing it, will see that they're sort of rebelling against society, so to speak.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because the club's safety officer per hour, Crawley Town's safety officer per hour message, it was quite detailed. We've run it in the Crawley Observer newspaper this week, but when we socialised it on social media, a lot of people were commenting saying it's great that he's saying this, it's great that we're not going to tolerate anymore, but how have these flares, as Steve said earlier, how have these flares got into the ground in the first place? Somebody's not doing their job, or they're allowing it to happen. So yeah, that needs to be absolutely clamped down, and that's just a starting point, and then go from there. So an interesting discussion. And moving on to the non-league stuff, we've had the second qualifying round of the FA Cup this weekend. Steve, how did our 9 teams get on, and who have they got in the next round, the ones that were successful?
Yeah, it was a mixed bag, I suppose you'd call it, of results for our 9 teams. 4 got through, 5 went out. So since last week we have lost. Who have we lost now? I've got to remember them now. Hastings, Burgess Hill, Eastbourne United, Stenning Town, and Eastbourne Borough. They've all gone out. So through to the next round are Worthing, Whitehawk, who will play each other in the third qualifying round at Worthing, Lewis are through, and they are at home to Hampton and Richmond. And Horsham, as we mentioned earlier, got through in a replay against Marlow, and they will be at home to Hamworth Villa in the next round. So we've got 4 teams through. We're going to have one Sussex team in the 4th qualifying round, the winners of Worthing Whitehawk. I think Horsham will probably get through. They should get the job done against Hamworth Villa, another team from one step below them in the pyramid. Lewis, they're at home to Hampton and Richmond, who are National South, so that's going to be hard. But Lewis have had a reasonable start to the season, so not impossible. So I'm going to say we'll have 2 sides in the 4th qualifying round. You never know, they might then get drawn against each other if, for example, we have Worthing and Horsham together. If they were to play in the 4th qualifying round, you'd be guaranteed a Sussex non-league team in the first round, and you could be looking at a game against Pompey or Charlton or somebody like that. So plenty of excitement.
Or a big
still,
side like Crawley Town.
Yes, I was just going to mention them as well. Yeah.
And when is the next round played, Steve?
Saturday 30th of September is the 3rd qualifying round.
Lovely. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Right, we'll move on to score predictions. We'll start with the big game tonight, Brighton versus Athens. Derren, Brighton are going to win, aren't they?
I think I'm pretty confident they should be able to pick up the victory. Like we were saying earlier, I don't think it's going to be, it's not going to be really easy, but I'm going to go for a 2-1 to Brighton tonight.
Frankie?
I'm actually, although I've said Athens will give them a tough game, I still think that Brighton at the moment are still far superior than most sides they play. So I'm going to go for 3-0 Brighton.
3-0. Steve?
Well, thanks to Derren and Frankie earlier, I now know everything there is to know about AEK Athens and more. But that hasn't changed my view. I am again going for a Brighton draw. Since my default position is going for Brighton draws. I think it's going to be quite an exciting one tonight, though, and I really hope all the Brighton fans sort of savour it and soak it up and enjoy it as their first game in Europe. I'm going 2-2.
2-2. I'm going to go for a 1-0 Brighton win. I think it's going to be tough. I think they're going to be hard to break down, Athens, but they will do it. 1-0 I'm going for, but it won't be exciting. Next game, we're going to go to Grimsby Town versus Crawley. It's Crawley's first away trip for about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks. So going to be a tough one. Grimsby always a tough place to go, but Crawley are going to get something there, I think, and I'm going to go for a 2-1 win for Crawley. Steve, I'm going to come to you first on this one.
Crawley a little bit up and down away from home, aren't they? They're the big defeat at Swindon and then a much better performance at Stockport. I think I'm going to have to go for a 2-1 Grimsby win. Sorry, Crawley fans.
I'll tell Scott Lindsay that when I speak to him this afternoon. Yeah. Derren.
In my address.
He's a tricky one, Grims. I'm going to go for a 1-1. 1-1, I think.
1-1. I think that would be a good result for Crawley if they can get anything there. Frankie?
Yeah, I've just noticed that Steve's going for the sort of Mark Lawrenson technique where Mark Lawrenson did his predictions on BBC Sport and they realised that for 3 years he predicted Liverpool to win every single game. I think Steve's on for a record with that, with Brighton drawing every single game. So, but no, I agree. I think Crawley away from home is not as strong as they are at home. They're still, they seem to be an entertaining games at the moment, Crawley. They can't seem to help themselves. So I'm going to go for 2-2.
2-2, lovely. That'll be an exciting old game for the fans. And finally, very quickly, Brighton versus Bournemouth on Sunday. Frankie, we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, I'm struggling to work out what will happen in that game because I'm yet to see how Brighton perform after their European adventure. So I still think they'll win, but Bournemouth, as I say, they're quite a difficult team to break down at the moment. So I'm going to go for another 1-0 win at the Amex.
1-0 win. Steve?
0-0.
0-0.
Sorry.
Going for a 0-0.
Yeah, I think they'll struggle after tonight. Sunday struggles after Thursday action.
Fair enough. Derren?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Steve with this one. I think I'm going to go for. I was going to go 0-0 or 1-1, but I'm going to go for a 1-1. I think. I think there is Brighton. There is this expectancy that they now beat these so-called smaller teams, and they've historically struggled with against them. So yeah, especially after the European night, I think 1-1 would be a decent enough result after European.
Lovely. I'm going to go for them scraping a 2-1 win with Toma scoring an injury time winner. So that's what I'm going for. Brilliant stuff. Thanks for the conversation, lads. you can catch up with all the latest sports news covering everything we've talked about today and all the videos, picture galleries, etc. from the weekend at sussexworld.co.uk. And look out for any extra videos we do. There'll be a reaction video after tonight's game, I'm assuming, Derren, with you and Sam. And then, look out for all of that on sussexworld.co.uk. Cheers, guys.